So think about the best manager you've ever had. Got someone in mind? Now, what if I told you their exact management style might completely fall flat in another country? Today, we are diving into some really fascinating research that pretty much challenges the whole idea of a universal great leader.
All right, let's jump right in with the big question. Is a great manager in Beijing the same as a great manager in Boston? For decades, a lot of management theory was built on Western models, with this built-in assumption that they just work everywhere. But as you're about to see, the actual data tells a very, very different story.
Okay, so to really get what this research is about, we need to be on the same page with what management skills even means. The study uses this classic framework that breaks it all down into three main pillars. First up, you've got technical skill. That's the how-to stuff, right? Your actual expertise in a specific field. Second is human skill. This is all about your ability to work with people, lead them, and keep them motivated. And third, there's conceptual skill. This is the big picture thinking, the ability to be strategic and see how all the different parts of a company fit together.
Now, let's talk about the study itself, because this thing was massive. We're not talking about a small little project here. Researchers surveyed over 2,400 managers, and they did it across 5 incredibly diverse countries. They had them self-assess their skills in those 3 key areas we just talked about, which sets us up for a really powerful cross-cultural look at things.
First up is China. The researchers make a really important point here. Philosophies like Confucianism and Taoism have been shaping societal values for thousands of years. And this isn't just some ancient history lesson. It directly influences modern workplace norms around things like group harmony and respect for authority.
Next, we go to Iran. The paper highlights that it's one of the world's oldest continuous civilizations. So you have this incredibly deep historical and traditional backdrop that absolutely creates a unique context for how managers operate today. The third location in this study is Pakistan. The researchers describe it as a high-context and collectivistic culture. Now, in simple terms, what that means is that relationships, trust, and keeping the group happy are often way more important than just direct, task-focused communication.
Our fourth country is Thailand. And here, the study points out that Buddhist principles, ideas like karma and merit, are things that people learn from a very young age. They're just woven into the fabric of society, and that, of course, extends to the workplace.
And finally, we have the United States, which the paper describes as a diverse, pluralistic society. It really acts as our point of comparison here, representing those Western management styles that have dominated business books for so long.
So, with these 5 very distinct cultures in mind, this is the actual paper we're pulling from. The researchers' goal was pretty clear. They wanted to see how all these different factors, not just culture, but also years of experience, how much education someone has, their age, their gender, how all of that actually impacts a manager's real-world skills. And believe me, the results were full of surprises.
But before we get to the data, let me just ask you this. You'd probably assume that the more experience a manager has, the better their skills get, right? I mean, across the board, it just seems logical. Well, let's see what the numbers actually have to say about that.
And this is where our assumptions just start to fall apart. Take a look. For conceptual skill, that big picture strategic thinking, American managers in this study showed no significant improvement with more experience, 0. But in China, the total opposite. A huge leap in conceptual skill only showed up after a manager had been on the job for over a decade. It's the same skill, but 2 completely different paths to developing it.
Okay, now let's switch over to human skills. This chart is comparing managers who are kind of mid-career with about 6 to 10 years of experience. And just look at the difference. Pakistani managers in this group reported way higher human relations skills than their American counterparts. This really challenges that old idea that any single culture has a monopoly on people skills.
And the differences just keep on coming when we look at technical skills. In Iran, managers' technical expertise actually peaked pretty early, somewhere between 6 and 10 years of experience. But in China, the highest scores came from the most senior group, the ones with over 11 years on the job. So what this is telling us is that the very timing of when a manager hits their professional peak seems to depend entirely on their culture.
And believe it or not, it gets even more counterintuitive when you throw education into the mix. This finding from the study was a real jaw-dropper. Get this. In China, managers who had a master's degree actually reported a lower level of technical skill than managers who only had a high school diploma. The researchers think this could be because folks with advanced degrees might be spending more time on theory and less time developing those practical, hands-on skills.
The study also found some really significant differences along gender lines, and No surprise at this point, these also changed depending on the country. For example, in Iran, male managers reported higher conceptual skills, but in the US, it was the female managers who scored significantly higher on human relations skills. This really suggests that cultural roles and opportunities can shape skill development differently for men and women all over the world. So if there's one big thing to take away from all this data, it's summed up perfectly in this quote from the researchers themselves. They said that just getting older or spending more years in a job doesn't automatically make you a better manager. In other words, skill development isn't something that just happens to you. It has to be actively supported by the right kind of training and experience, which, as we've just seen, looks different from place to place.
So what does this all mean for you, for us? Well, it means we really have to bust this myth of the universal manager. The key takeaway here is that skill development is not a straight line. It's bent and shaped by culture. This research proves that a one-size-fits-all approach to leadership training is just, well, it's flawed. The exact strategies and skills that make a manager a superstar in one country might not work at all in another.
And that leaves us with one final thought to chew on. In a world that's getting more and more connected, where our teams are spread all over the place, maybe just having technical or human or conceptual skill isn't enough. Maybe the most important skill of all is going to be the ability to understand which of those skills matter most and when and where. What do you think?